So let's just get right into the next one. My block, my community. And this is led by Kwani O'Farrell, who's a decorated NYPD detective with 26 years of military public service. Kwani is the founder and president of Cops and Kids New York and Long Island. We also have Alonzo G. Jacobs, Esquire, who's an attorney and a community leader who volunteers consulting, counseling, and representing underserved youth in matters such as parole and school board hearings. And we also have Ed Gross, who is a Suffolk County police officer and community leader who exposes youth to opportunities to learn, network, and exchange ideas between experienced professionals and the next generation of minority police officers. So if you guys ready to build your community and help protect it, please.
Yes. Good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me loud and clear?
Yes.
All right. Welcome. So my name is, like Ezra said, Detective Kwani O'Farrell, 23 years NYPD and 4 years as a active member of the United States Navy. So today we're here to discuss my block, my community. And it's mostly talking about the last couple of months, last few weeks, obviously, of all the protesting that's going on. How can we build better relationships with law enforcement, and then also at the same time talk about rightful protesting, your ability to exercise your First Amendment right, which was given to you under the Constitution, and also to learn how can we peacefully protest and build that relationship with law enforcement. So we have, once again, Ed Grochi, who's a Suffolk County police officer, and we have Alonzo as well as Esquire to talk about some of these things. How can we better our relationship with law enforcement despite what we're seeing in the news today? So we're reaching out to the young people to see and hear what frustrations, what issues you're having, what's on your mind, because the last few weeks has been very trying. So we've been seeing a lot of protests. We've all been active in the community. We want to know what's on your mind. We know there's a lot of fear out there that the press is putting out. We need to hear from you young people how we can ease your mind and maybe enlighten you on what responsibilities are law enforcement. So we'll send it out to you guys unless Alonzo or Ed Grossi has something to add.
Oh yeah, it's very important to realize and understand that you having the ability to protest is providing an outlet for your voice. And because you're doing it in such a productive way, and you're corresponding with the police, letting us know where you are planning to protest, the route that you're planning to protest, it gives us access to let you have the lanes or avenues to use those opportunities to protest. So it's very helpful for the police department to get that intel so we can better serve and protect the lanes or streets or crossways or highways that you're going to use to protest, because we want to make sure that your rights to protest are being utilized. We don't want anyone to be injured during these protests. We want to make sure that when you are protesting, that you are doing it in a fashion that your voice is being heard and that laws are not being broken. Because once laws are being broken, you're kind of contradicting the whole point of you protesting. You're kind of protesting laws that are not being upheld, and you want to make sure that those laws are actually going to be intact. So doing it peacefully, doing it in accordance with the people who are going to make sure that you are safe is paramount.
So, hello? Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
This is Alonzo Jacobs. Hello to everyone. Just want to add that I'm a criminal defense attorney, plus I'm a former New York State parole officer. One of the things I want our people to know, I used to say the police are not your enemy, but they're not your friend. I have to change it up now. I'm not going to say, because we certainly have Black officers, but I would say that they're not your friends. So tread lightly, because sometimes when you think that, don't make any statements. The only statement you should give them is your pedigree. And if they stop you, name, address, date of birth, things like that. Don't make any statements, because any type of statement you make, if you think you're making it better for yourself, understand something. Just like the two officers just spoke and myself, people are trained in cross-examination. We're trained in lie detection. We know when you're lying, we'll cross-examine you. And sometimes many offices, as well as the district attorney's office, I know in Suffolk County, we have 177 assistant district attorneys, but only 6 blacks. And there's no bureau chiefs, no deputy bureau chiefs. There's an imaginary line. We wouldn't be on that line. So when they said you should be judged and charged by a jury of your peers, that's not happening. So with that said, keep your mouth shut. Just give them your name, address, tell them date of birth, things like that. If they ask you where you're coming from, where you're going, you ask them, are you detained? If you're detained, then you have a right, your Miranda rights need to kick in. So that any statements that you make, they give you Miranda, your right to remain silent, anything you say can and will be held against you in a court of law. You have the right to an attorney. If you don't have one will be appointed to you. That kicks in. Once that kicks in, even before the detained doesn't mean the officer has to say you're under arrest. Most likely they don't say you're under arrest, okay? Once you're in their custody and control, okay, it's the same as being under arrest. Your rights kick in. Tell them I want to speak to my attorney and keep your mouth shut. If after you say I want to speak to my attorney and you blurt something out, they'll use that against you. And why is that important? Because a lot of times it's hard to go to trial because any statement you make, usually with Miranda will have you sign off on, you have the right to remain silent and you have to put an X there. You have the right to an attorney, that'll be there. However, if you're making a statement, that statement is admissible to a jury. They're gonna have pre-trial hearings. They'll have to have pre-trial hearings to see if that statement you made, okay, can go into the jury or go to a jury while you're at trial. But here goes the things, understand something. Most offices are supported, actually most all judges are supported by the police union. Right now we're working on legislation, we're drafted, where we can get the police unions to donate money to the judges' coffers. So the police unions, they have a lot of money, so they control these judges. That's the reality of it, okay? A judge wants to be reelected, he's gonna allow that statement to come in because you don't wanna be known, or they don't wanna be known as a judge that finds officers not guilty, finds officers guilty of police brutality, anything like that, of abuse. So right now there's 177 also judges in Suffolk alone. Nassau's numbers are the same. 177 judges. Suffolk County has 6 black. Nassau County may have 4 or 5 black. Okay, so your chances, and black doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to get fairness, but it means you have a better chance of getting fairness. And I just want to follow up with this last thing. When I'm trying a case, a criminal case, if I can get 1 black on my jury, I have a 90% chance of winning. Not to say that blacks are stupid, blacks are unreasonable, but blacks understand. So, but most juries are all white. And studies have shown that the juries are going to believe the cop when he comes in there with his uniform. So once you get charged and once you're in the system, you go forward, there could be a lot of bad things that happen to you. So we have to, as black people, if parents will listen, we have to, when that jury duty comes, because we know most of the people on this panel, we don't want to do jury duty. We say we find any way to get out of jury duty. You have to do jury duty because that way you can give your peers an equal chance and a fair trial and assist in that process. That's about what I have to say. And finally, I told my daughter, she's heading to Howard Law School in July. I always tell my daughter, stay in the light. Stay in the light. Okay, anything dark, creepy, drugs, anything like that, please stay away from that because there's only 2 places you can end with that, dead or in jail. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Alonzo. So being that we have Alonzo, who's an attorney, we have Ed Grossi, who is a Suffolk County police officer who is black, and I'm in black too. What we do is we go out to the community. So my organization, Cops and Kids, we go out to the community and talk to the young people and let them know this is what your rights are when you're stopped by the police. It's very important that we teach our young people of color. Reason being is, I'll throw some numbers out there. We're 5 times more likely to be stopped by the police. Now, why is that? It's because, most of the reason being is because the neighborhoods that we happen to live in, this is not for all people of color, happen to have most violent crimes. Doesn't necessarily mean that all of us in that particular neighborhood are committing these violent crimes. So it's important for our young people to know what their rights are. But then there's the other flip side of it. Knowing your rights is one part, but know what your responsibilities are. If you know that you are hanging in an area that's prone to drug crimes, or you're associating yourself with people that are doing things they have no business doing, that puts you in a certain situation where that you're going to possibly more than likely be stopped by the police. So knowing your rights and responsibilities are very, very important. So that side of it, and having the part of the solution is having young Black officers on the job, having more Black people of color taking these exams, so we can get in and change these injustices that are afflicted upon our communities of color. So young people, we don't want young people to be scared or intimidated to become law enforcement or become an attorney. We push you forward and give you that momentum so that you can do it. If I can do it, you can definitely do it. I come from a neighborhood in Brooklyn, wasn't so great, but I made my way out because I know that I can affect change. And by being a part of this institution, I can change it from the inside. So just to know and understand that if I can do it, you guys can do it too. And Greg, Greg Brochi, I'm sorry, I apologize, is a perfect example, come from Suffolk County Police Department, where he can tell you how many people of color are actually on a job, and he's making a difference in his community.
Yes, it's very important for you to be the person that's going to be dictating what's going to be happening when you're being stopped. You should want to have someone who looks like you being detained when you're being stopped, because they're going to have a reflection on what it's like to be on the other side. Since 2002, there's been a stalking increase in the responsibility for them to have the Suffolk County Police to have more diversity on the police department. 2012, 2015, 2019, there was a heavy push for us to reach out to areas where we were living, we were located, colleges, historical Black colleges, communities. We were pleading for us to take the test because it's not a lot of requirements for us to have this Suffolk County police test. You only need 4 requirements. You need to be a driver's license. You have an active driver's license. You have to be over 19. You have to be a U.S. citizen at the time that you're hired. These are things that are not hard to attain. And you have to have a GED. These are all things that we are eligible for. And the fact is that you can have this without having a college degree, and you can make well over 6 figures and then be a responsible contributor to your community is paramount. You can be the person that when you are stopping someone, they won't feel as apprehensive and knowing that they're going to have their rights not taken away from them, but possibly abused. So we wanted to make sure that there's that diversity within the police department. We need diversity in the police department. I can't ask anyone who does not know what it's like for me as a Black person to have a understanding of what it's like for me as a Black person. I grew up in Gordon Heights, which is in Quorum, New York. I was allowed to actually patrol that area after pleading with my bosses to show them that I am a shining example of what it's like to come out of that situation and be a positive reflection. I plead with everyone, if you don't have your career set in mind, take the test. You can always decline it later on. You can always postpone it. But once that opportunity passes for you to take the test, you have to wait another 4 years. So after this test that just happened in June 2019, the next test is going to be 2023. But you can get yourself prepared. I'm on the committee for the recruitment for Suffolk County Police. We want more diversity. So if anyone is interested, I'll send you my email on the link below, and we'll make sure that you get yourself eligible. We also provide jobs for kids with Suffolk County Police Department, Police Athletic League. We participate in engaging our kids in 25,000 in sports activities throughout Suffolk County. We want to make sure we keep our kids as busy as possible, because idleness is the devil's playground. We want to make sure I keep our kids as busy as possible. We want to give our kids as much opportunity as possible. So with that being said, I'll pass it on to
I want to make a comment. Officer Groce, I want people to understand that he's not, see, Officer Groce and Detective Farrow, we all run in the same circles. Everybody needs to understand that we run in the same circles because we're all community activists. I don't consider Groce just an officer. That's my boy. I trust him 100%. And I encourage everybody. The Suffolk County Sheriff is having trouble hiring Blacks. The Suffolk County Police Department, there's a consent decree right now with the U.S. Department of Justice because they're under federal watch. I don't know what's going to happen now because of who our president is. Are they going to try to enforce that decree? But we need to, at least like Officer Grossi says, apply for these jobs, apply for New York City Corrections, apply for Nassau County Corrections, Suffolk Police, because what happens is when you get in trouble, we all I got an army behind me. Grossi got an army behind him. Farrell got an army behind him because what he does, and most people on this panel got armies behind him. So we get in trouble, somebody's coming for us. Somebody's coming to help us. But if you're not involved in anything, you don't give any time to anything, whether it's the NAACP or Officer Farrell's organizations or somewhere in your church, nobody's going to know you. And what happens is people like to attack the weakest. People like to attack the weakest. So we need help in this struggle. So yes, join these organizations, try to apply it to the DA's office. And that nonsense that I hear in the neighborhoods about don't join the po-po and all these stupid terms, they turn my stomach. Because you know something? It's nice when you have, like I said, I can call a black officer up and say, hey, what's going on with such and such? And they can give me some, I'm not saying anything illegal, but just give me the intel. Let me know what's up. So when I go to these precincts and stuff. But one final thing, I want to mention this. When you apply for any of these law enforcement jobs, get in touch with Officer Farrell or Officer Croce or myself, because what happens is they have these, like, black people applying for guns in Suffolk County. What happens is they got the same group of white men, and they make sure they deny black people their gun permits. They say, you know what, they lack temperament, or they say there's something in their history. Go straighten that out. And by the time you straighten out, the appeal process is gone. I seen it happen with the police test. You take the test, you go for the psychological, they fail you, but when you go, see, we're grown-ups here. We've been through a lot. So therefore, we're ready to go to war with anybody, anytime, anywhere. But you're just young and you think everything is honest and everything is set up honestly. It's not. This is all a game, unfortunately. And the game is at the most expense of the lives of black people. I say black people, everything else umbrellas down from there. So when you apply for these exams, hook up with somebody, because they give tests. There's black organizations that give preparatory courses. Then there's black organizations that can make calls to the precinct. And we call different people and say, yo, homeboy, this is somebody we know coming through. Don't mess with them. And then they know, listen, we better back up because there's going to be some smoke here. Okay? I just want to put that out there. Thank you. Thank you.
Yes, so thank you, Alonzo and Officer Grossi. We'd like to know if you guys have any questions in regards to law enforcement, if you've been stopped and you have any questions regarding being stopped by law enforcement, anything of that matter, feel free to reach out to us. Ed Grossi gave information. Alonzo gave us information. I can be reached at copsandkidsli.org or on Facebook. If you don't want to ask questions, if you want to meet up, even some of the young people, I've had some people contact us and they say, you know, Detective O'Farrell, I just want to sit down and have a conversation with you. Let's go out to eat. Let's get a bite to eat. Let's just talk and talk about these interactions. So it's very important having people of color out there on the police force so we can have positive interactions. Now, yes, are there some circumstances where we have bad interactions? That's because a lot of times law enforcement doesn't understand the community. And we need to have more law enforcement of color who understands these communities, understands their culture, understands their background, so we don't have these type of incidents that have been going on all across the nation. And then there's the other part of it. There's training. There's that cultural diversity training that we need to have more of on a regular basis. So when you have people of color representing the police department, we don't want them to think that, oh yeah, he's just a black cop or he's an Uncle Tom or anything like that. No, because you have to understand where we come from. We have a job to do, but at the same time, we know what it's like to be black, growing up in these black neighborhoods. We know what oppression is like. We know what racism is like. We know what everything is like. We've been through it. And we're sitting on a different side sometimes, even in law enforcement. So we want you to know that we're the voice for the people. We want to talk to you. We want to help you out. Like Alonzo said, there are these tests. These exams were put together and they were structured in a way so that we couldn't pass these exams. And even if we did pass them, then there's the psychological. So they're formulated in a sense to weed us out. So they know for a fact that, okay, well, black people don't want to take this job. So we're going to do everything we can. These are things that have been in place. But moving forward to the 2000s, the late 1990s, things started to change a little bit. There's been more of a push for recruitment from all across the board in New York State to get people of color. But here's the other thing. So we take these exams, we get on the job, then what do? We need more promotional exams. We need people of color to start taking these sergeant's exams, right? Start taking these lieutenants and captains exams so that we can be in place to make decisions that reflect our communities. And that's it. Any other questions? Anybody have any panel questions?
There was a question that was put by Little O, and he was saying, have you seen or experienced any discrimination as a Black police officer?
Well, I have, me personally. So I'm only speaking for me. I can't speak for everybody else. I've gotten to a place in my career where I, did my time out in the streets. I've been to several esteemed units based upon what I've done in my career. In the community affairs, I've dealt with the community on several levels. So I personally haven't received that type of discrimination. I'm sure it's out there. And I'm sure other officers could probably speak about their circumstances. But me personally, no, I haven't.
Of course I have. Our police department is derived of 98% non-African American. So even if the upper management tries not to have this happen, situations are still going to dictate themselves where the people who are biased are going to feel really comfortable with themselves and express it and make it so that you feel uncomfortable. Your job as a Black officer, as a Black person, is to not allow that to happen or not allow it to continue. You have to stand firm in what you believe in and who you are. And don't let anyone change who you are supposed to be to make themselves feel comfortable. If you have to make someone else feel comfortable by you standing true to yourself, you have to do so. So yes, absolutely. But again, it's your job to make sure that that does not continue in front of you at all.
I have two more questions.
As a Black parole officer, as well as when I was in parole and we were in Brooklyn, and I saw it. You know what happens? They would say, we would go look for absconders. People didn't show up. They were absconding from parole. But the white officers like saying, like it was a game. Let's go to such and such neighborhood. Let's go here. That's what it was. But since I was on the job, and understand something, when I say me, I am confident. You have to come out with a sense of arrogance. You have to be strong. You're a Black man. You're world enemy number one. I understand I can be touched by anybody. Anybody can be touched. But what I hear, I'm going to try to use the power I have to protect all our people that I can. With that said, when they say, hey, we're going to go out to such and such neighborhood, I would say, something, I'd like to go to get some absconders today. Let's go to such and such neighborhood and change the whole dynamic of it. And they were like, oh, Mr. Jacobs, why are you doing that? No. We're going to level the playing field here. You have that type of power as an officer just to let them know, I'm not going to sit here and play with you. Because in parole, just like every other agency, yes, you see discrimination. I see it in the courts with the judges every day. A lot of times I get, you get some bad decisions. You look in the judge right in the eye, but you know where he came from. You know what his pedigree looks like. You know what his team looks like. But at the same time, there's certain times you can move and other times you can't move. And this right now today is a move for me because look, I'm sure I picked up a couple of friends here for my team and you picked up me on your team. That's how it works. It's teamwork. Now you have numbers you can bring in certain areas, just like they had the march in Smithtown recently. That 4th precinct, they had the supervisor. It was for 39 years. It's notoriously racist. Okay, so when they jumped on little Black boy up there, you had some older men that jumped on the little Black boy and his friends. The police department didn't even file charges yet. They're not filing. I understand some backroom talk, but I already knew what the game was. I wasn't going to go over there in March because I knew what the game was. There was discrimination over in that police department. In these police departments, they need to hire Black, not only promote Black cops or hire ranking Blacks in those areas to split up that discrimination. Thank you.
There's a few more questions. Nassan Phillips said, how do you deal with discrimination?
So, hello? Can you hear me?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So how do we deal with discrimination, right? If you feel you're discriminated against, you have a procedure. You have a procedure you can follow. You can file a grievance in your police department. You can speak to your representative, your union representative. So there are ways of dealing with that discrimination. Before you even get to that point, you want to speak to your immediate supervisor. Let him or her know, this is how I feel. I feel like I'm being discriminated against. and you give him or her that opportunity to rectify the situation. So whether that discrimination is coming from your direct supervisor or another supervisor or some other person, then you approach that situation accordingly and deal with that. If that situation is not rectified, then you have other channels in law enforcement. Then you go to your union delegate, your union representative. You speak to him or her and explain, but make sure when you explain it, you give the entire detail, the entire situation, so that they're not misleading or then misinterpreted what your words are, and then you go that route. So that's how you deal with it internally, because the whole idea is being a person of color is very difficult in law enforcement. It's difficult when you're trying to get different assignments. It's all about who you know and your contacts. So when you're dealing with that discrimination, you deal with it from bottom up. So you definitely don't want to skip anybody, and make sure they're all in the loop when you're dealing with that discrimination. And if it's not rectified, then you have to go another route. If you have to contact an attorney, and that's your right, contact an attorney, and you deal with it from that such point moving forward. So that's how you would deal with it internally if you feel you're being discriminated against. Now there's the other side of it too. You may get backlash, and I'm sure there's some law enforcement officers that feel that if they speak up, then they're not going to get those assignments. They're not going to get those days off or things of that matter. But you have to set the tone, because if you don't, then you have the other enforcement of color behind you that are too scared to speak up. So we have to change the narrative, and we have to speak up for one another and protect somebody else. If you see that somebody else is being discriminated against, or they're being profiled, or they're being singled out for the reason, whether or not they're black, white, or even if they're a female, because there's a gender discrimination as well. So we have to be able to protect those individuals and let them know that, listen, I'm here to help you out. And if you feel you're discriminated against, let's challenge that. Let's fight that. So we have to be the cause. We have to make sure that we proceed forward and be steadfast in that. It's an uphill battle. It's a fight, but we have to continue to fight.
Okay.
Agreed.
At this point, we also have the U.S. outside. I'm working with a group because, listen, like Officer Grossi said, 98% of the Suffolk County Police Department is white, okay? I thought it was 3% black, but it's white. So here goes the thing. You got the U.S. Attorney's Office, you can follow. You follow with internal affairs and all that, but understand 98% is white. A lot of those complaints don't go anywhere. But you want to, like this officer just said I spoke to, I forget your name, but he says you want to create that paper trail. You want to skip a link. But you can go to the U.S. Attorney's Office. Also, Letitia James, the New York State Attorney General, is black also. And I think she's out of Brooklyn, and she has our interests at heart. I believe she has our interests. So you can go to, listen, our former police chief in Suffolk County just got out of jail. He did 5 years. Our district attorney just got convicted along with his chief of staff. They're looking at 20 years on his sentence, okay? So what happens is somebody went outside. We know, Roshi and I know, people went outside the police department to the U.S. Attorney's Office. You go to Attorney General. Then later on, once you got your lawyer, you go off to, you write a letter. You have to put everything in writing. You can't just tell a story and drop it on somebody's lap, because that goes with the wind. You got to sit down in your chair and meticulously write this letter, and you send the U.S. Attorney, Letitia James. If you send it to the desk sergeant at the precinct, the lieutenant, if certain people get this, they got a hot potato. Now they have to deal with this hot potato, or everybody's going to lose their job or whatever, and nobody wants to lose, or nobody wants to have egg on their face.
There's a few more questions and we got to move on. Lester Chisholm asked, how do we create an environment where cops are accountable? Is it voting, education? What is it?
Well, I can tell you from experience that, law enforcement is held accountable. And there are disciplinary procedures and hearings that the job gives out to law enforcement officers if they're found violating procedures. Obviously, if they're found violating the law, they are held accountable. As we can see what's going on now, a lot of law enforcement officers are getting arrested for their actions. I think I just heard the other day, if I'm not mistaken, one of the officers in the Breonna Taylor incident was arrested. So they're definitely held accountable. I think that a lot of the stuff is not publicized and it's kept inside for accountability reasons. So they are definitely held accountable. I think also too, it deals in a municipality. each state you go to, there are different rules and regulations on how they deal with police. And it's been a process in where they try to protect a lot of these bad apples, which honestly makes it bad for us. So the good officers, black, white, or indifferent. So they're definitely held accountable. It's just that the pressure has to be put. If there's an officer doing something wrong he has no business doing, and he's not held accountable by that municipality, then you know what? The people need to speak up. They need to say something. They need to protest. They need to demonstrate. They need to write letters. Whatever they need to do to remove that person from his or her position. Because remember, we take an oath, right? That oath is to protect life and property. And that's for everybody, no matter your gender, your race, your color, or your creed. And you're held accountable. You're held to a higher standard. So you're expected to go above and beyond and do your job and then some, but you're also held accountable if you do something wrong or improper. And we have to hold them to it.
That was great. Wow.
Can I make a comment to that?
Mm-hmm.
To make a comment to the young people, to what the officer just said, which I do gotta say, Cops for Kids and my brother Officer Grossi have been doing a lot in our communities for our kids. I just want to say that to make that clear to everyone. Also, you know, so that way the kids understand this. When you protest and you march, right, you bring awareness to that problem, right? But to change those problems, like to change those policies, we have to change those policies ourselves. That just brings the awareness of it. We have to change it. So, so remember that when you're out there marching, to have a plan, because you don't want to just keep marching just to march. You want to have a plan. So you want to, you know, like do your homework and see what policies you want change and look into it. And then what you can do is find some leaders in your community and bring them together and tell them your ideas, and then they can set up meetings for you with people that can make change. We just did that on Thursday. For the past 3 weeks, we had the young people in our community for 3 weeks for 3 to 4 hours a day do their homework, and we had people, different speakers come in. We had a retired judge, a retired police commissioner, a retired superintendent of a school. We had them come in and talk about different issues in our communities that should be changed and how you can change it. And these young people came up with questions and just different policy that need to be changed, and they helped them, guide them through it. And we had that meeting with the top people in our county to make those changes, and they listened. So you guys can do the same thing. So it's all about going back to planning and setting goals. It's the same thing. Thank you.